right, hello and welcome to another episode of Raven Conversations, the show where we bring you the news and information from around the Washington National Guard and the Washington Military Department. I'm Jason Kreis. This episode is going to be a special one. It's May, and in Washington, that can only mean one thing. No, I'm not talking about when British Captain George Vancouver first laid his eyes upon and named Mount Rainier on May 8th of 1792. No, I'm not talking about May 7th, 1945, when plutonium from the Hanford site was used in the world's first test of a nuclear bomb in New Mexico. And no, I'm not talking about the Seattle World's Fair that was well underway in May of 1962. No, I am talking about what is likely the first thing that will come to your mind when we use Washington and volcano in the same sentence. Yes, I am talking about that fateful day in 1980 when a 5.1 magnitude earthquake underneath Mount St. Helens triggered a catastrophic stream of events that resulted in one of the most deadliest volcanic events in U.S. history. Just listen to some of these statistics. 57 people were killed. The blast was heard up to 700 miles away. The debris from the avalanche traveled at speeds of up to 300 miles per hour. Volcanic materials formed a column that reached 80,000 feet into the atmosphere. Ash from the eruption was deposited in 11 U.S. states. 24 square miles of devastation from the lateral blast and subsequent lahars leveled forests, flooded rivers, and destroyed homes. The thermal energy that was released in the blast was equal to 26 megatons of TNT. Now, any normal person would hear all that and say to themselves, I don't want to be anywhere near that. No, thank you. That sounds like too much death and destruction for me. But my guest today is no normal person. He's a helicopter pilot. And he flew for the Washington National Guard at that. But he's retired now, and he graciously came to our office studio to tell us about how he heroically flew towards death and destruction, towards uncertainty, and helped rescue people who were trapped and stranded. Mike Cairns, thank you for coming in. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
It's good to have you.
You're welcome.
First, let me get a little introduction, a little background, your career, where you grew up, how you got into flying.
Back in 1967, I was in college and surfing in California and having a great time. And
Wow.
And my uncle gave me a call, Sam, and told me that my 1Y was not good enough, and I was drafted at the time. My father was a Navy pilot. He was flying fighters.
Mm-hmm.
And he didn't want me to go into the military on the ground. He said, why don't you take the test for flight school, go to flight school, and get something beneficial for you, mm-hmm. since you're going in anyway. So I took all the tests. I qualified. And they sent me to Fort Walters, Texas, where I went through primary. After primary, I went to Fort Rucker, Alabama. There's a Cairns Army airfield there.
Oh, wow.
And that's where I got my wings. I was a class leader of class 68-513. And upon graduation, we had about 125 guys in the class, and all except for 5 of them, us, went to Vietnam. I was sent to Europe to a VIP flight detachment, mm-hmm. to fly generals around as a W1 way back then, many years ago.
Yeah.
Because my dad was flying in Vietnam, and they wouldn't send 2 members of the same family at the same time.
Mm.
So when he received orders to come back to the States, I received orders to go to Vietnam via Cobra School. So I went through H-1G Cobra School in Savannah, Georgia, in Georgia. And after that, had a 30-day leave, then went straight to Vietnam. I was with the first all-gun company, all-Cobra company in Vietnam. It was the 235th Armed Helicopter Company out of Canton, and we had 5-6 different basic missions. I flew my tour there, had some real exciting events.
I'll bet.
I'll never forget. Came back to the States and had a couple of years left. I was a W-2 at the time.
Mm-hmm.
And they sent me to Fort Hood, Texas. And in Texas, I was given a direct commission. They wanted me to become an RLO. So I took
what's an RLO?
Real life officer instead of a warrant officer. So I took a direct commission to first lieutenant, made it up through captain, became a company commander. But I spent most of my time doing mid-intensity warfare testing for Europe in Cobras. We had a site called the Stabilized Night Site, which became the actual night vision stuff that they're using today. And we were testing that in 1972.
Wow.
I did the one quick last thing about that, but we also had an opportunity to go up against F-4s out of Point Magoo. So they sent 3 of us from my gun company at Fort Hood up to Hunter Liggett in Northern California, well, Central California, on the coast, and we had an opportunity to fly against F-4s out of Point Magoo, which is in California, testing weapon systems like red air missiles, and we actually did real well against the Navy.
Nice. And what brought you to Washington and the National Guard here?
Well, I was in the reserves in California, and I was offered a position with a clothing company, Lee Jeans, in Oregon. I was out of the service at that time. So I moved to Oregon, and my territory for selling blue jeans was state of Oregon, and I joined the Oregon National Guard. Did my time there. Levi Strauss hired me and wanted me to take over the major stores in the Northwest. So I moved up to Bellevue, Washington, and I moved there in December of '79. In late February of '80, just a few months later, I joined the Washington National Guard at here at Fort Lewis. At the time, it was Fort Lewis, and it was the 116th Attack Helicopter Troop.
Okay.
And I joined them as a W-2. They wanted me to revert back and start moving up the ranks again. So I took my rank back as a captain and started flying. My first flights were in early March of 1980, just before the eruption.
Wow.
That was kind of my progression.
Okay. Very cool. So, you were flying Cobras, you said, at that time, or?
We had initially in the National Guard.
Yeah,
we had a UH-1M, a Mike model Huey, and we had some H models. We had a couple of 58s. I know you've talked with Jess Hagerman.
He was the 58 pilot, right?
Yeah. He was a scout pilot.
Yeah.
And in the Marine Corps, he flew what we would call in the Army a CH-34. So, but he flew 58s. He was also flying for Weyerhaeuser at the time, and that was the same aircraft he flew for them, a Jet Ranger.
Okay.
So the unit up here, we had 3 gun platoons, and each gun platoon had Mike model Hueys at the time. In, I think it was 83, quite a bit after St. Helens, we got in S model Cobras. There were only 4 of us in the unit. Hal Kolb, Hal, and Tim Locke, Chuck Knoll, and myself were the only 4 pilots that flew Cobras in Vietnam.
Oh, okay.
So we went to transition school first.
Okay.
That's how we got the Cobras.
Okay. Well, I have an interesting photo here and I think we'll kick it off by
Okay.
letting you look at the photo,
Sure.
and then we'll let it jog your memories.
My
So you
43-year-old memory.
so you know this photo. So for the folks listening online via audio, it is a sunny day, beautiful, pristine picture of Mount Rainier, I believe that is.
Correct.
Okay, and then there's 3 helicopters in front of it.
Okay.
And the interesting thing about this photo is that it is dated May 17th,
Correct.
1980.
May 17th, 1980, my attack helicopter troop went to summer camp. We were headed to Yakima. We had 4 gunships in our platoon, and I don't know if you want all the names of the guys that were flying, but
No.
okay. So we were flying over to Yakima first thing in the morning. That's the south side of Mount Rainier,
Mm-hmm.
and we're in a staggered trail formation. And we had one of the aircraft with the guy who took the photograph, a warrant by the name of Earl Cook. He flew out to the side of us and snapped that just as we were flying by the mountain. And the skies were perfectly clear. You can see a few low clouds right there. But that was the day before the mountain blew its top.
And I think it's cool to say you can't really make it out in this 40-some-year-old photograph, but the gun tubes are designed in a specific way on 2 of these helicopters. What do they look like?
This is in the old National Guard.
Yeah.
Today, it's changed quite a bit.
Oh yeah.
We had our rocket. Those are rocket pods,
Okay.
and they're 14-shot pods that were on the side of the aircraft, and all of them were painted like beer cans. We had a Budweiser beer can, and we had a Rainier beer can, and that's what the rocket pods looked like. And whenever we had visitors come and see us, we'd drop those pods and put
Cover them up or
put the other ones back on.
Yeah. Okay. That's pretty neat. Neat little bit of trivia there. So you guys got to Yakima, and then woke up in the morning and something was just different.
That evening, we did our regular routine, just got settled in, and we, you train 14 days straight. You don't have any time off. You have maybe a day off or 2
Right.
in between. But so on Saturday night, we all just kind of got our gear in order and got ready for the briefing the next morning at 8 o'clock.
Mm-hmm.
So we went over into the operations facility that we set up for the summer camp at 8 o'clock on May 18th, the morning of. We were sitting getting our preparation done for going out and firing rockets and 40 millimeter and minigun on the range, and we were discussing how we would, fly and what we were going to do. At a little after, I think it was probably not more than a minute after the mountain had blown its top, so it was maybe around. Remember, this is 43 years ago, so I'm going to be off a little bit of the time. But we started getting phone calls. The phone started ringing off the hook in operations, and they put the briefing on hold, answered the phone, and said, "Hey guys, the mountain's blown its top. You got to get your gear and get out of here." Somebody had said that they told us to hunker down, but they didn't. They said, try and get the aircraft out of here because we're going to need to use them. So we ran. The first thing we did is we walked outside on the western side of the building, looking to the west, and the entire sky from the south all the way around to, if you'd say like from a 6 o'clock to about a 10 o'clock position.
Wow. And that's within a couple minutes.
Within 10 minutes.
Wow.
That the sky was completely black and it was moving towards us. There was lots of lightning on the leading edge, and we didn't feel anything coming down, but we saw it coming at us, and there was so much static electricity in the clouds that they were just lighting up. And they were, at that time, I'd say maybe no more than 10,000 feet high at that point, based on just judging AGL on the clouds. We got our gear, got to the aircraft, and I was in the first attack platoon. So we wanted to get all of us off at the same time. And as we got our gear in, and we just said, let's go. We took off from our position where the aircraft were setting. And as we're taking off, we heard all this pinging on the aircraft because the cloud was starting to pass over us, and we were getting debris from the ash cloud hitting the aircraft. But we got up and out of the area fast enough, so we actually outran the cloud at that point. Flew north to Ellensburg, west to Seattle, south down to Fort Lewis, and refueled. Got orders to head down to Toledo and to Kelso. I went to Kelso.
Okay. Wow. So were those areas at all being inundated with debris? No. Kelso, not yet?
No, the only debris they got was the mud flow. They got all the timber coming down and being stripped out of the logging camps.
Wow.
But there was no ash there. Everything was going. It was kind of like a pie shape. The blast zone went mainly to about 015, 010 degrees past north, and to 235 degrees south was the blast zone. But all the ash went, almost directly due east northeast because of the prevailing wind.
Okay.
And the way it came out.
Okay. When you got to Kelso, did you think that you were gonna get? I mean, what time is this? What? Let me guess. An hour later, maybe longer. Or
you mean after we left Yakima?
Yeah.
Oh, probably three hours or so. 4 hours.
Did
we had to fly back to Seattle first.
Okay. But then you refueled.
Then we refueled and went down.
Went to Kelso.
We staged.
Yeah.
At Kelso.
And did you go into the area that day?
Yes.
Did you think when you landed in Kelso that you were going to go in that day? Did you think you wanted to wait a little while longer? But anyways, go ahead.
No, good question, because it helps me recall.
Yeah.
We knew that it was going to be dangerous and weird and different flying, mainly because we had no idea how far to the east we'd be able to get with that cloud, with a big cloud and all the stuff coming out of it. So we were given a briefing, and you had to volunteer. They could not require you to fly into a blast zone. So everyone volunteered. No one went back down.
I would imagine.
Volunteered.
Yeah.
These were some of the best pilots
this is
I've flown with.
This is what we do, right? In the National Guard.
Well, the National Guard. National Guard responded wonderfully to this event.
Yeah.
So we were given basically 4 major sectors to search: north of the volcano, the North Fork and South Fork of the Toutle River, and a little bit south, and that's quite a few miles in between that. That's maybe a 25 mile run. And I went up the North Fork of the river on the first mission that I had. So we flew we started off in pairs, then we split off and we're flying single ship and looking for anything we could find.
Okay.
The problem that concerned us the most was on a turbine engine. You've got your intake, and you do have a filter in there, basically. Just layman's terms.
Right.
And that filter is to clear debris from getting into the P1 and 2 power turbines.
I can imagine that filter's working overtime now.
It's working overtime. We had stuff hitting our aircraft all day long.
Yeah.
We could see chunks of things going over us. The visibility out by Kelso and Toledo was you know, about a mile. Then as you got in within 10 miles, I'm guessing now, I don't remember,
Sure.
about 10 miles of the mountain, there was the visibility dropped down to, 200 feet in elevation, if that, at times, and maybe a half mile, quarter mile, if we were lucky. So, and with everything blown down, we couldn't follow a map real well because the river was being washed out. All of the timber had been shaken loose, knocked over, root balls out, bark gone, branches, leaves gone, roads covered, and ash going over us all the time. So everything was gray. And there were steam vents from just about a mile, I don't know, I think a mile west of where we thought Spirit Lake was. We had steam vents, pockets of them, all over the place. So there's a lot going on, poor visibility. It was 120 plus in the aircraft.
Wow.
Smelled of sulfur and debris going over us, and everything's gray. So initially, nobody was finding anything. The guys in my unit that were flying over the kind of the western part that's 15 miles from the mountain, they were finding people in homes and others that were kind of trapped where they were, but they weren't in a blast zone. The cloud was not over the top of them. It was just cloudy because the eruption, I'm sure, changed the skyline that day. So they were pulling out people that were stranded and trapped, and they pulled out well over 100 people, I think.
And these are people that are further away, but still within the danger.
Correct.
Okay.
But the mud flows we flew down on the second mud flow on the Toutle River and said it was going 45 miles an hour.
Wow.
And there's 100-foot logs that are churning and popping out of it. Looked like
in doing research for the video I did several years ago, and every May, whenever this comes up, I always go through the archives and watch some of the B-roll that came out of there, and it's just mind-blowing how much destruction and devastation there was. So yeah, it's quite the picture. And you were like in it. So you were like in it, above it, and it's just fascinating. Let me move on to another picture. And well, first of all, if anybody wants to see these pictures, we'll put them on our Instagram page. So go ahead and head there, and we'll have those uploaded there. And give us a follow while you're there. This picture is the Huey, right? Huey.
It's a Mike model Huey
Mike model. Okay.
The rocket pods are popped off, so we didn't.
You had to
get rid of them, so we had less weight and more space. More room.
Oh yeah. And it is landed. It's shut down, and there's a I don't know if that's a pilot or a crew chief. Yeah, he's wiping off the windows, which looks like there is a ton of ash all over this helicopter.
It's coated in ash. Anybody who made a landing anywhere near the ash, the aircraft was completely covered by the time you got on the ground.
Because this
is
water wash is kicking up dust and getting all over and you can't even see.
No, you can't see.
How do you land in something like that? Like how do you navigate your surroundings? Like just like inch by inch moving, slow, or
I think I think it's experience and guys that have flown in difficult situations anticipate what we're going to see, and we could tell just flying through the areas. Every time we were within 100 feet of the ground, it was still kicking up ash at 100 feet. So we knew that if you got into deep ash, which I did, it was going to completely encompass the aircraft. And when you made an approach to an area like this, you were still going to get, a lot of ash blocking your view. So what you do is you pick a point on the ground. You know the attitude of the aircraft. You know what your rate of descent is. You know what your elevation is. So you have to kind of put all of that together and say, okay, I'll check my chin bubble, and before I crash, I'm going to pull a little pitch and set it down. And that's how you got down.
Wow. So you credit service in Vietnam with all these different scenarios to help you navigate stuff like this or something like this? Or I know it's a very different scenario, but I can imagine.
I think an advantage maybe that I had a little bit is that flying in Germany, I flew in the snow.
Oh, yeah.
So I've landed in, not a whiteout condition, but I've landed with, poor visibility except through the chin bubble before. So that, for me, that's what helped me. The other guys, I think it's just skill as well.
And for those who don't know, chin bubble is likely that
little plexiglass
at your feet where you can look down at the ground. Yeah.
The reason for that is in Vietnam, when you're landing an aircraft or making an approach, especially for what we call slick drivers to transport aircraft, and you're getting close to the ground and you've got elephant grass or something underneath you, you want to be able to see what's there in between your feet, because you don't want to set on something that's going to tip the aircraft over or cause a problem.
So yeah, these conditions were just unbelievably. Yeah, seeing something like this is just a photo of just a big field of trees that are just lying on the ground. It just tells you just the force of that. It just swept through the area, knocking everything in its path onto the ground.
And this is after the eruption.
Yeah.
This is not the day of.
Right.
And it kind of looks like a beard on a guy. That's what we all thought.
Okay.
But the interesting aspect to me is the fact that there's nothing left on these trees.
Oh yeah,
no bark,
they're
branches,
bare.
Nothing.
Yeah,
they're bare. And these are 100-foot trees, most of them, 3 feet in diameter, and just looked like pickup sticks.
Yeah. So here's a photo, and remind me of this model.
That's a OH-58.
Okay, so that's Jess.
That's Jess Hagerman.
You did tell me that last week, Jess. Yeah, right. So it's landed in what is a very, very dusty area with a pickup truck. Very,
ashy.
Yeah. And then it looks like it shut down, or maybe
no, he shut it down.
Okay.
The blade's not moving.
Yeah, you can't. Yeah, there's no wash or anything. And then there's Jess standing looking at the truck.
He got a license plate number, and there's 2 bodies inside it.
Yeah.
They were viewing. So the truck is facing to the. I know we were over him. We took a photo.
This is your helicopter, the vantage point?
Yes.
From this picture?
On top, taking the picture. Yeah. He went in, small aircraft doesn't kick up as much ash. Right. And he was getting the license plate number, which was primary. But they were facing the mountain, and they were about 6-7 miles out.
Wow.
And they were completely mummified, basically.
You can imagine you guys came across a lot of scenes like this.
And we did.
Yeah. This is another good picture.
There's Hal Cole.
Yeah, Hal is on, outside of his helicopter in a dusty landscape, and standing with a gentleman who is in overalls and is completely black soot all over his face and hands.
Hal,
so is Hal too, almost.
Yeah, Hal made one of the landings like I did, where you're completely surrounded by the ash going into the ground. I don't know who this gentleman is. I pulled a guy out that almost looked like him, about the same age, just completely covered with ash, because they were really at the edges of the blast zone. They would not have survived in the blast zone.
Right.
But outside it, you could survive outside of about 10, 12 miles. You unless the ash cloud encompassed you. And Hal's no longer with us.
Yes. Rest in peace, Hal. I interviewed him several years ago for that video, and I remember him talking very much the same, what you're telling me now about just navigating and just complete.
We didn't have
blind.
GPS.
No.
No satellites, no GPS.
But he did tell me something interesting. I think I brought it up with you last week when you visited us, that they were getting imagery from satellites of actual license plates of vehicles that are just like stranded somewhere.
After the sky cleared.
After it was cleared, not
the day of. No.
Yeah. But that just stuck with me because I was like, wow, you can make out license plates from a satellite. That was just...
turn off the bathroom lights when you have to go. You don't want anybody looking in.
All right. So I think we could go into the story that really is just pretty incredible. Her name is Sue, correct?
Yes.
And this is a picture inside of a helicopter, a young lady and a pilot in the pilot seat. And that's basically it. She doesn't look like she's just getting situated in the back of the helicopter. Can you tell me about Sue?
Yeah, that's the pilot is me. That's Sue. Was it Nelson or Ruff first? I don't remember. I think it's Sue Ruff. Yeah, Sue Ruff, and then she married Bruce Nelson. That's right. Okay. The guy she was with. She and Bruce Nelson.
You also picked up, right?
Yes,
Bruce?
Picked him up too. She and Bruce Nelson and two other gentlemen were at a campground on Green River, 18 miles from the mountain.
Okay.
It's on the extreme north side of the mountain, and the Green River runs, all throughout that area on the further north side. They were camping, and it was beautiful that morning. They heard this is from Sue to me, they heard the rush of the wind after the blast. They did not hear the blast. They didn't hear it. That shocked me. But they heard the wind coming. Then they saw the sky darken, and she said almost instantaneously, trees started coming down, and it encompassed them. They dove into their tent, and Terry Kroll and Karen Varner got into their tent, and they had their dogs with them. And the trees came down and crushed and killed Karen and Terry. And we didn't know it at the time, but it actually penned a dog that lived, and we got the dog out on the following Thursday.
Oh, man.
But they, when they were able to get out of the tent because the ash settled to some degree, it was still completely over them, but they had visibility. They started hiking out, and they hiked they took the other two guys. One had a fractured hip, and he was taken to a little, it was a fishing shack or camp, not too far from there, and they said, "We can't carry you and get out of here. We'll come back for you." This is Sue telling me, so I wasn't part of any of that. But they left the other two guys at the camp, one with the fractured hip, and I'm not sure what happened to the other one. I don't really know. He wasn't killed. He was burned bad, so I think that's why he stayed at the camp. And then Sue and Bruce started hiking out with one of the dogs. At late in the afternoon, they were going up and under timber that's down. They're crawling under, stacks of trees that are 25, 30 feet high, and going through ash that's up to your shin. And the ash is hot, and ash has not cooled down. And they hiked through that for, I'm guessing, about 7 hours. And I don't know how many miles it was from their camp to where we found them, but we were getting ready to quit for the day because it was starting to go ahead.
This is the first day.
First day,
yeah.
Day one. It was starting to get dark. So we were just we said, hey, we've been following these tracks. We can't find the people.
So that's how you
Yeah.
located them, is you saw their tracks in the...
Well, we saw the tracks, but then we lost the tracks.
Oh, okay.
I don't know if more ash. I don't know why we lost the tracks, but we did. Mike Samuelson, my crew chief, was looking out the right-hand door on the helicopter as we had flown by them, and they were beating the ground with their jackets to make the ash rise up. And he said, "Hey, I got some people." So we made a left-hand U-turn, and they were coming down a logging road on the edge of a cliff, and it was probably 25 feet wide.
Mm-hmm.
And it was about 1,000-foot drop off.
Something like that.
Yeah, very similar to that.
Yeah.
Just almost exactly like that, but there were a few trees up in the area that we were in.
Mm-hmm.
But it was similar to that. The difference is that's wet. You can tell that it rained there.
Yeah, that was days later.
Right.
After
So,
the rain.
so you could get an aircraft down without kicking up all the dust,
Mhm.
ash. So we saw the logging road. We knew that we couldn't land up it or down it. That we had to go in sideways and do
Just like,
an approach
yeah.
to the side, because the rotor blades wouldn't fit if we tried to land on the road. So we made a commitment to getting onto the ground from about 200 feet out, and just held the aircraft and kind of said, "Hey, let's both get on the controls, and you look out the chin bubble on your side, I'll look out mine, and when we see the ground, let's get on it." And so we made the approach, and we lost sight of the ground about 75 feet off the ground. Kept going down until we saw about 5 feet from the ground the skids, but we're doing it real slow, and that's even worse, because coming down slow, just more and more ash kicks up.
Yeah.
So you have to make the commitment and then just trust that it's going to work out.
Mm-hmm.
When you down the pitch in the aircraft, the ash will eventually settle, which it did, and our rotor blade was less than, this won't be a fisherman's story, but it was probably less than 5 feet from the side of the cliff.
That's
where it was
amazing.
coming down in front of us. Then we walked up the road, got these guys, and they had joined another older gentleman that looked like the one that Kolb was with.
Mm.
And we brought them back to the car. He had a dog too. We put 2 dogs, 3 people in, and she said, "We've got a friend that's hurt, injured in the logging camp. We're not going back with you unless you'll go after him." So I said, "Okay, we'll go take a look. We're running low on fuel."
Mm-hmm.
She took us back to told us where they were, so we knew how to find it.
Mm-hmm.
And there was a 1-lane bridge there that was too narrow to get my aircraft on. So I called Hagerman. I knew he was still out in the area. Called him in his 58, said, "Can you come out here?" And he went out, landed on the bridge, which was pretty dangerous too, because you got a 1-lane bridge with guardrails on the side.
Wow.
Little bitty aircraft. He's a Marine. They don't let him fly big aircraft. And so he got on the ground. They went in and pulled out the guy with the fractured hip, and the other one with the burns, I think, was gone at that point. Somebody got him. I don't know how. And we flew back in on a low fuel warning light and got on the ground with about 10 minutes of fuel left.
Wow. So afterwards, Sue was so struck, and so it was left such an impression on her. What happened with her career afterwards?
38 years after Sue, after we pulled her out and Bruce out, they got married. He died. He actually passed away. She was in a show kind of searching for me.
Mm-hmm.
So we got together again, and I had not seen her, and she told me her story. And her story was that she was so impressed with the National Guard, not me, but with the National Guard.
I'm sure you had a piece of that, though.
And so she joined the Guard, and she became a combat engineer. She served 2 or 3 tours of duty in Afghanistan, and Afghanistan, and I don't think Iraq. But she became a career soldier.
That's amazing.
Spent 30 years in the National Guard. Flew a flag for me at one of the camps there on I think it was September 11th.
Wow.
And she attributed that to how what she thought of the Guard and what we did for all the people down there.
Yeah. I mean, it's just a testament to what the National Guard does. That's
All the
what
time.
our mission is. Yeah, it's to help people who are going through the worst day of their lives.
Oh, you bet.
That's pretty amazing that she was, ended up doing that. And so the PBS show you're talking about is We'll Meet Again.
Correct.
And it was I think it was Ann Curry who was the journalist who did that, and it was reuniting people who had met at one point in their lives, split up, but they want to come back. They want to reconnect with this individual.
That's correct.
And that's how she searched and found you.
She found me through Hagerman. She went to the Washington State Archives, and they had Hagerman's number, not mine, and so she called Jess, and he said,
"Yeah, I know that guy.
I know that guy." So anyway, that's how she found me. But she turned out to be a not just a career soldier, but a good soldier.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, was she an officer?
No, she. I think she was an E8
when
she retired.
Oh, that's great. It's
Yeah.
amazing. So I kind of want to ask about stress that you went through. I can imagine that you're just, or at least I would be. I don't know. You might have been cool, fly, as a cucumber, with all your experience flying through some unfamiliar. But I would be super stressed. Did that have any toll on you while you were out there, or did that affect you in any way while you were?
I think that it was awe and wonderment. So we didn't have time to think of. I didn't feel any stress.
No.
Except during approaches.
Mm-hmm.
The one landing that stressed me out. There's only one other time that I've flown an aircraft that I had anything significant like that was unknown. You don't know if your engine's going to get too much ash and it's going to quit while you're making the approach to the ground. There's so many unknowns about this, and we weren't prepared to fly under a volcanic cloud. Everybody thought if it blew, it would be a vertical eruption, but it was lateral.
Yeah.
And when it came out, it was on the ground. And so we didn't know what to expect and how far would be able to fly up there. On day one, Jim Kelly, who was a National Guard guy, and myself and Fred Phillips and I think another air crew, we were in the area where we thought Spirit Lake was, and there's no water. We don't see it. I think I shared this story with you.
Mm-hmm.
But basically what had happened is that the pyroclastic flow had pushed all the water, and I think a what are you? Volcanologist would know if this is accurate, but pushed all the water out of the lake. The trees are already down, root balls up, and when it got up the side of Mount Margaret, pulled them all back down into the lake, covered it, and ash throughout the day. That would have happened real quick. And then ash throughout the day covered the logs. So when we were there, we saw no lake.
Really?
Nothing. And we knew Harry Truman was evaporated. So
yeah. He was probably the first one because he was right there.
Yeah.
Amazing. Any other stories that you remember from that time? during the rescues that you want to share?
During the rescues, I think the stories outside of that would be. I think there's one good one, and then I can share a couple more. But
sure.
Bruce and Sue wanted us to go back in and get somebody. The Army got down there too later on. Wanted someone to go back in and get out the bodies of Karen and Terry. We needed a 58 because the Mike model was too big to get into the area where even close to the bodies. So Jess Hagerman and Bruce Nelson and I got in the 58, and we flew out to the area. Bruce pointed out where they were. We found an area that we could get the aircraft in. We landed, and I think you have a picture of Bruce and Jess and me afterwards, but we hiked in, got the bodies out, and we found the dog that I was talking about had been pinned by the log where she had 3 puppies.
Oh, wow.
And they were all there, and they were all alive. So in Bruce's backpack are 3 little puppies.
Oh.
And we brought out the other dog, and then we had an aircraft come in and drop a line down, and we hoisted everybody back up in a I forget what we called it at the time, but
a little yo-yo.
Yeah, a little yo-yo.
So afterwards, after a few days, it started to rain, and then started to keep the ash, on the ground, and you were able to see a lot better. How did the not rescues, but maybe if there was any rescues at that time, or pulling out or retrieving bodies that are there? How did the mission change after the rain came?
Well, after 2 or 3 days, it rained the following Thursday.
And this happened on a Sunday, right?
Pardon me?
This happened on a Sunday, right?
It happened on a Sunday.
And then Thursday.
And it didn't rain till the following Thursday, so we still didn't have. We just were searching for. We found a lot of cars, and they were covered with ash, and Reed Blackburn's car was completely covered with ash up to it was a Volvo, I think, covered up to the window. We just found things, but didn't get in to get them out at that point. Just marked where things were. Then we started receiving coordinates of where people might have been. And then we had missions to go out and look in these general areas. We were taking the Cowlitz County Sheriff's deputies with us and cadaver dogs. I flew a bunch of those to go out and pull people out. So after the rain, we started seeing color on the ground. Like we found up at a place called Trade Dollar Lake, we saw something silver shining on a mission for us to go up and see if there was a Toyota Dolphin motorhome up there. And so we were flying in the area, and we noticed something kind of glistening on the ground because of the rain. It cleared the ash off of it. We made an approach, went in, and we found an individual that had been crushed by a log at the lake, and we found his motorhome, but we didn't find the rest of the party. So those were the kind of missions afterwards. We pulled a Russian logger out of a tree in the middle of a mud flow. That one that survived. We found another one that, well, no, he actually passed away from ash inhalation later. We found another one in the top of a tree about 6 weeks after the eruption. So we just had a lot of identification that we needed to do.
Yeah.
That was the type of missions that we flew.
Okay. Does that about cover it, like your story? Is there anything else that you want to talk about?
The only, the unit received a citation for meritorious service. We got that from the state of Washington. Jess Hagerman, myself, Fred Phillips, our flight surgeon, Mike Samuelson, and Randy France, and there were 7 of us,
Yeah.
received an award called the Valley Forge Cross for what we did.
That's
So
awesome.
that's about it.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's well earned. On top of all the other medals that you've received in your military career, I bet.
Couple.
Well, I mean, I really thank you for stopping by
Sure.
and telling us this story. I mean, this is exactly what the National Guard does, what we stand for, and this is definitely a defining moment in our organization, and dare I say the state and country, right? Like, this is an event that is significant, and you were a part of it. And I truly believe that you're a true hero for everything that you've done.
Yeah, everyone there was.
Everyone, yes, everyone who was
Yeah.
involved in the rescue effort.
Yeah.
And thank you for your service.
Sure.
And thank you for telling us your story.
Thanks, Jason.
It was great to hear. It was a real honor to interview you.